Hello, everybody, and welcome to History Bite number 230, dated April 17th, 2021. I'm Walter, your mobile historian and blue-collar scholar. This History Bite is entitled The Failed Nomination of Abe Fortas to be Chief Justice. You all already know that I love everything that has anything to do with the Supreme Court of the United States. All right, anything. It's my favorite branch of government. And as you know, I wanted to be an associate justice of the Supreme Court, at an earlier point in my life. Okay, so I know a lot about the Supreme Court as an institution, as well as its history. Okay, and this particular event in history is one that, believe it or not, many Americans have no idea even happened, largely because it failed. Okay. Americans, however, are quite familiar with the very contentious and political nature of Supreme Court nominations. Guess what? They are nothing new, and they have been happening for more than a century, though they are arguably more political now than what they have ever been. Okay? The Fortas nomination to be Chief Justice in 1968 was arguably the first modern shitstorm that was a Supreme Court nomination, given that it happened 52 years ago now. Okay, and arguably it was the truest shitstorm, pardon my French, of a nomination for anyone to be Chief Justice. Okay, not just associate, Chief Justice. All right, so like the Bible says, there's nothing new under the sun. Okay, and Supreme Court nominations will continue to be this way, arguably, as long as the Supreme Court continues to inject itself into politics more blatantly at times than in other instances. But as long as the court is going to be overly political and overtly political, this is how Supreme Court nominations are going to happen, how they're going to be. C'est la vie. At any rate, the Fortas nomination of 1968 has its roots with the appointment of Abe Fortas as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court in 1965. He replaced Justice Arthur Goldberg, who President Johnson had arm-twisted off the court to be his ambassador to the UN. Not exactly a fair trade to me. But nonetheless, Goldberg quit and became U.S. ambassador to the UN, and Johnson appointed his longtime friend and legal advisor, Abe Fortas, to replace him on the Supreme Court. One liberal for another liberal, all right? And Fortas' nomination was a good one, seemingly. Fortas was very knowledgeable in the law. He directed a firm, and, he made a lot of money. He certainly was not an incompetent lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, okay? The only problem was that once Fortas got on the Supreme Court, he continued to act as an advisor to President Johnson, okay, in numerous ways, okay? Highly improper for a sitting member of the Supreme Court to continue to act as an advisor to the president, even if the president is your personal friend. We have ethics guidelines for a reason, okay? So, with that in mind, all right, when Chief Justice Earl Warren decided to tender his resignation in June of 1968, something that was motivated with the fact that first, Johnson had already withdrawn from the race in March of that year, and second, Robert Kennedy had been assassinated in June of that year, okay? And it seemed ever more possible that Richard Nixon, the Republican nominee, would go on to win the presidency in the fall. So Warren, who personally despised Nixon, and the feeling was mutual on the other end, decided to get off the court as quickly as possible so that LBJ would be able to name his successor. All right? So there's nothing new about politically timed Supreme Court retirements. All right? They happen. Every time a retirement happens, it's political. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Okay? So, to replace Warren, all right, President Johnson nominated the worst person he could have possibly thought of. His longtime friend and associate and breaker of so many ethical guidelines, it's not funny, Associate Justice Abe Fortas to replace Warren as Chief Justice. And of course, In appointing an associate justice to be the chief, that creates another vacancy. So to replace Fortas, Johnson nominated Texas Judge Homer Thornberry. Okay? Now, Fortas, all right, the nomination for him to be Chief Justice was made with the wisdom that Johnson had and the mathematics of the Senate. He had already secured the support of prominent senators Everett Dirksen and Richard Russell, all right, whose support would be essential to any judicial nomination, all right. Johnson was known as the master of the Senate, by the way, because he had served in that body for so long and knew how it worked so well that he could predict outcomes almost perfectly, all right. But this was not one of those instances that he predicted perfectly. Indeed, Johnson had underestimated the opposition he would see in the upcoming weeks to Fortas' nomination to be Chief Justice. And so this also, before I go any further, shows that there's nothing new, folks, about making election year nominations to the Supreme Court. That is not something that started in 2020. Nor 2016, the most recent times that has occurred, all right? Election year nominations have been happening for a very long time, okay? So don't think that that's something wow, ooh, or new. It's not, okay? Making two appointments to the court in an election year where you are not running and you are a lame duck is bold. And many of Johnson's closest advisors, including his defense secretary Clark Clifford, told him that, all right? You know, and they strongly suggested that Johnson pick somebody else to be Chief Justice, not Fortas. Fortas was way too controversial, too much baggage, too many skeletons in his closet. But Johnson, hard-headed, refused to listen, all right? And as he would see in the upcoming weeks, he probably should have listened, all right? Personally, Warren thought Johnson should have nominated William J. Brennan Jr. I think that would have been a phenomenal choice. But, you know, that was not to be, as Brennan and Johnson, you know, weren't exactly, you know, aces. So Johnson wouldn't have even considered Brennan, even though he was much better of a justice than Fortas in so many ways. But with all that in mind, Fortas, all right, in spite of the election year foolishness and, you know, the timing working against them, Fortas did nothing to help his own cause here, all right? In addition to his ethics violations, Fortas had also committed many financial improprieties as well. Like, dude, what the heck? So when Fortas' nomination hearings began in July of 1968, Fortas would be a 4-day testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, in which he misrepresented the truth substantially, as well as told whole lies to the Senate Judiciary Committee. They probed him about his relationship with President Johnson, asking him just how close he had remained to Johnson on the court. Did he advise the president? Did the president consult him on political matters, legal matters, and all this? And to which Fortas committed the act of perjury and said no. You know, these were all outright lies. Okay, Fortas had done those very things. He had advised Johnson. He had suggested appointments to Johnson for other executive branch offices. He had, drafted statements for the president. He had done all sorts of things that a Supreme Court justice just shouldn't be doing. Major ethics violations. Major, okay? Talk about impropriety, huh? So if that wasn't bad enough, you know, Fortas, the cronyism with President Johnson and his outright lying about it, then they probed him about many Warren Court decisions, some of which he participated in, some of which he didn't, okay? Which is kind of unfair. Ask him about decisions that happened before he even got there. But, c'est la vie, that's the Judiciary Committee. They can ask you whatever they want, all right? And you'd better answer them, tell them what they want to hear if you even want to have a prospect of moving forward, all right? You know, so they attacked Fortas about that. Like I said, that was unfair. The cronyism was fair. The decisions was a bit unfair. You know, Fortas was uncomfortable answering questions about the court's past decisions, you know, as he should be, because this is inappropriate questioning, in my opinion. And then we have Fortas's financial improprieties, where he had accepted $15,000 for lectures made at American University in the summer of 1968. All right. So, I mean, even though that aspect of it was not brought up at the hearings because Congress had adjourned, okay, they soon received the information that had occurred, okay, which ultimately led to his nomination being filibustered on the Senate floor, okay. When Congress adjourned in the summer of '68, all right, they hadn't finished his nomination with a vote yet, okay. When they got back, that's when they received news of the financial improprieties, and when debate began, boy, they filibustered the heck out of Abe Fortas, okay. Johnson had lost the support of Everett Dirksen, Richard Russell, and other prominent senators, whom he needed to get Fortas' nomination through, all right. On October 1st, 1968, a vote to end debate, all right, was which is known effectively as cloture, all right, did not go as planned. 45 senators voted to end the debate, and 43 voted the other way, all right. Thus, it fell short of the 60 votes needed, all right, to end the filibuster and take a final vote on Fortas' nomination, all right. So cloture is a procedural action in the Senate where the senators vote to end a filibuster and essentially vote on a nominee, up or down, okay. And it failed to happen here, all right. Only 45 voted to end cloture. Voted to end the debate. All right. You need 60 to end cloture. All right. That didn't happen. All right. So essentially the debate over his nomination did not stop here per se. However, Fortas, who was wiped out by this, okay, totally wiped out, all right, knew that his nomination wasn't going to go any further. All right, so he asked President Johnson to withdraw his name from consideration, and the president did so accordingly. And with Fortas' failed nomination to be Chief Justice, Homer Thornberry of Texas never even received a hearing. And Homer Thornberry may have been a good member of the court, but since Fortas didn't advance, neither would he. And the nominations of both men were effectively withdrawn. But that wasn't the end of it all right? Because the Judiciary Committee hearings had essentially exposed all of Fortas' dirty laundry, okay? Once President Nixon, all right, attained, the White House, all right, once Nixon attained the White House, he pressured his Attorney General to find some information about Fortas, damning information that could effectively get Fortas off the court. And indeed, such information at the searches of Attorney General Mitchell was found, all right? They had recently discovered with that Fortas had accepted a $20,000 lifetime payment from a most unscrupulous man named Lewis Wolfson, who ultimately would serve a prison sentence for manipulating stocks, all right? And Fortas was essentially attached to a criminal, all right? And though he never accepted the money, cashed it, nonetheless, his name was still tied because he had initially agreed to it, even though he had returned the check. And once the information got out by way of Attorney General Mitchell, and once it was presented to Chief Justice Warren, it became clear that these ethics violations Fortas was damaged credibly, so badly that he couldn't remain on the court. And indeed, once the information was presented to Fortas by Chief Justice Warren on May 7th, 1969, Fortas was very embarrassed and said very little, and he left the Supreme Court by way of resignation to President Nixon on May 8th, 1969. Thus, before Earl Warren himself, Fortas left the court. And with Warren's withdrawn retirement initially from President Johnson and agreeing to serve until the end of the 1968-69 term, President Nixon was able to fill the vacancies of both Chief Justice Warren and Abe Fortas. All right. And Nixon would also make 2 more appointments in his first term in the White House. So, after leaving the Supreme Court, Abe Fortas kept a relatively low profile, all right, until his death in 1982 at the age of 71. So that, folks, is the failed nomination of Abe Fortas to the Supreme Court of the United States in the summer of 1968. A nomination that was a complete circus, to say the very least. So if you have any questions or any controversies about this, much of this reference was obtained from my Supreme Court books. I have a whole lot of them, all right? So if you have any questions about this, leave them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. If you've not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so now. I appreciate it. Just hit that little red subscribe button, and we are in business, all right? I appreciate you all so much for listening. Thank you, and I hope you learned a thing or two from this, okay? Like I said, it's the Supreme Court. If it's about the Supreme Court, I'm all for it, and I'm happy to teach about it any way I can, all right? Take care, stay safe out there, be blessed in all you do, and I'll talk to you at the next bite. Peace.